Start off with something positive. I believe in lifelong learners, but I am completely and utterly against the charter movement because only 17% of charters do better, 47% do exactly the same as public education, and 36% do worse. The charter movement is about privatizing public education, which is worth $865 billion a year, up to as much as $1.2 trillion. If you want a comparable model, think credit default swaps in subprime. The people going into charters are doubling their money in 7 years. This isn't about, when you have something like the Los Angeles Unified School District, you can fix that if you choose to fix it. If you have what's going on in Washington, D.C., charters were started to be proving grounds to reintegrate these ideas into public school. And what we have done is we have given up on fixing those schools. We call it not being culturally sensitive at Dorsey High School, and we lower the bar for children of color. We're reorganizing Crenshaw. I've taught in those schools. They've never asked those kids to learn, and charter schools are a way of adapting. The total capacity of all colleges and universities in the United States is 30% of high school graduates. They're closing down every other program. It is a crime to see an intelligent young man like Jerome, I wonder where the money for your film comes from. I wonder, with Eli Broad and Bill Gates wanting to privatize this industry, and teachers who stand up, there are 3 things that will get you fired in LAUSD. 1, you're at the top of the salary scale. 2, you're about to vest in lifetime health benefits. And 3, you're actually trying to educate children of color. The only people I know who are more afraid of losing their job than teachers are the reporters who don't report what's going on in Washington, D.C. and who don't report. Now, why are you so much, here's the question, why are you so in love with charters when most you had Steve Barr? He took over Locke High School. He didn't do any better to Locke because social promotion puts kids in secondary school without basic skills with a single subject credential teacher who does not have the skill to do the remediation that these kids need. It is humiliating for these children to put them into secondary after having socially promoted them. Jeffrey Canada found out that when these kids arrived in Harlem, they had heard 3 million less words than their more affluent counterparts. And what he did is he started when women got pregnant, and he made sure. So why don't you address the reality?
Real quick. I actually want to speak on behalf of Green Dot Public Schools because I went to Green Dot Public School.
Which one?
I went to Animal Ralph Bunch Charter High School,
okay,
by Jefferson High, and I was actually a part of the school while they took over Locke High School. And I personally feel like it did make a difference in that school because before they took over Locke High School was on the verge of being no longer being Locke High School. It was just they were just gonna close it down. And then I saw them divided into 4 or 5 different schools within one school, increasing public safety, student safety. So Steve Barr actually did a really good job with
that. How about stealing $60,000, which he did?
See,
what about the API scores?
He got busted.
I'm about education. I'm telling you that.
So am I.
I went to a Green Dot Public Schools, and I'm at UCLA today, and so I feel like it's not. It definitely isn't a bad school. And my charter high school graduated 97% of the students at my school went to a 4-year university, not a community college, not a CSU, but UC or private school. So Green Dot actually did a really good job.
Really?
So I actually didn't have a question. I just wanted to.
Oh. Excuse me, young man.
I think that what we're doing here this week is a really great way to raise awareness of what we can do to combat academic inequity. But I want to know, beyond just this week, what we can do as students to really engage legislators and our student body, because as you can see, this room isn't full. What we can do to really make sure people are aware of these issues, that we can really make tangible change to improve education.
I think that's a great question. I mean, I think part of it is, as you can tell, people have strong feelings about this issue. But you know who has been left out of the equation? Parents. And I think that more and more we need to engage parents who are working every day and trying to make ends meet, and trying to figure out when they're trapped in a certain school district based on zip codes, and they know that their future is free, figure out ways to get them engaged. So I think part of it is engaging legislators, but also working with some of these community-based organizations. I mean, when we were down in New Orleans working with some folks, we actually went to public housing and we began to train the trainers. And by that I mean, it's easy for someone like me to parachute in town and out, just like I'm here now. But it's another thing when you empower people who are locally based, who can have the wherewithal to understand the issues, not get caught up in the emotion of the day, but really are caught up in the reality of their neighborhood situation. When you empower them to be spokespersons, it's not like some big brother coming in from above. It's about these people making a difference. Let me tell you something. We had hundreds of parents go to a rally, and they organized it, they planned it. They didn't want their schools to be shut down, and it made a big difference. So I think that you've got to marry your activism here on the college campus with what is needed on the ground with real people every day, because that's where the change is going to come. See, the education reform movement, the traditional education movement, has been an elitist, out-of-touch movement. And the only way it's going to change is not through a top-down endeavor. It's going to be bottom-up. And see, that's the groundswell we got to build. We got to build this bottom-up thing. So at the end of the day, people can debate all they want, but the power of the people is going to dictate the change. That's why having this positive culture around learning and getting people excited about it makes a big difference.
I'm going to put out one organization too. It's called Students for Education Reform, and Democrats for Education Reform are two groups that are working on campuses. UCLA actually has a chapter of Students for Education Reform.
We started talking about UCLA, so if you guys are interested in joining, you can talk to me after. We're just getting started. So.
One last question, and then we'll go on to the next film. Any students who
3 questions, come on.
make it hard to
You want a dose of reality? I know it. And I got the proof.
Yeah, I have a question, yeah. It's actually, well, first of all, I have a question, but it's actually very interesting how, like, when, I don't know, even speaking on the, like, perspectives of some students so far, like, it's mostly white men who don't agree with this, and then you get, like, systematic, I guess the, like, system that we're in, it's just interesting to see that reflect. But my real question is, what are some of the, like, legislative things that you feel like should happen right now? Some of the, like, because I think, yes, in terms of charter schools maybe privatizing education, but I think the methodology of charter schools is something that the public system should work towards. And I would say I'm not more so of an opponent of charter schools, because I definitely went to one. But I do think that public education is, of course, like, very important, right?
Yeah.
And charter school is a form of public education, but, like,
Well,
and with that being said, how do we, in terms of legislation, what is something that we should look for?
well, I think you're right. I mean, I emphasized it several times. Some people may be here. I don't think it's an either-or proposition. See, I think that depending on your neighborhood, your community, your state, it could be a charter movement. I was in Alaska. These folks were living out there. Some folks were crazy about Kevin James in Alaska. They brought me up there, and 10% of the Alaskan population is homeschooled. It's a big deal. That's their form, and that's pushing the system toward change. They spend $18,000 per child in Alaska, and their outputs are near the bottom. In one school district, they spend $48,000 per child, and it's a failing school district in Alaska. So, at the end of the day, we can't continue to have this proliferation of more money being spent for an educational result that's not beneficial to real people. So I think that it's not one choice over another, it's having quality choices from which parents can choose. That's what's important. So What do we do with legislators? Part of it is educating them about education too. I can't tell you how many legislators have said to me, well, you know, charter schools are private schools. You just said they're public schools. They are public schools. And, you know, it's part of this conspiracy to privatize education. Well, at the end of the day, they're accountable, and you know what? The bad ones should shut down. And so I think that we've got to educate these legislators, and then we've got to deal, if you want to fix the system, let me tell you something. After 30 years, after a nation at risk, you're not going to fix the system with the same work rules. Where, you know, tenure for life after 2 years, that's not going to fix the system. You know, no performance pay. You know, no evaluations at all tied to in any way to the outputs of children. You're not going to fix the system when you have these legislative fiats. Some legislator decides, you know, I want this reading curriculum. And in fairness to the school district, they say, okay, we'll put this in this cost center, and then this principal has to manage a budget where they've got to include some political, you know, reading program that was put in there. So, you know, in fairness to the school district, it is hard for even the best principals and teachers to operate in a bureaucracy that is more self-protecting than tailored toward educating children. And then this leads to the culture change. See, part of the problem with public education, and people can disagree, but they're wrong. Part of the problem is a mission realignment needs to take place. Because the mission of traditional school districts is not to educate children. That's not the mission. That's my view. The mission is to really manage what you've been given. And, you know, there are great teachers in the system doing great things. There are great principals. But even the best principals and the best teachers in the traditional public school system will tell you they're handicapped by the bureaucracy. They will admit that to you. Now, they may not admit it in, but they will admit it to you that they're handicapped by the bureaucracy. So the best way to break that bureaucracy up is to make sure you create an environment where there's more autonomy for these principals who are doing a good job, and you measure what they're doing based on, in part, how these kids are doing.
Can you make a quick note of that?
Part of the problem that students are failing, especially in urban communities, is because the curriculum is not connected to the lived experiences of the youth. Can you touch on culturally relevant pedagogy?
You're absolutely right. And you know what? A lot of that curriculum has been there for 20, 30 years, and it is irrelevant to a lot of these students. And I do think that's where the innovation and creativity takes place. You know what the game changer is? Which scares the heck out of some folks. And that's this virtual revolution. Because at the end of the day, the digital age is going to make education tailored toward the end user. And it's going to be a one-on-one personal learning experience like that PDA is for each of us. And that's going to jumpstart change, because, you know, that way people can, like these homeschool parents, that's why homeschooling is growing. They're able to shop for a curriculum that works for their kid. Because Johnny ain't learning with that curriculum that's been in place, you know, for the last 30 years in the school district. Talk about my Alaska trip, to your very point. It's a great question. One of the questions they ask on the SAT has to do with if you're visiting want to visit your friend who lives, you know, 5 miles away, which way, what mode of transportation, and they say you can walk or you can take a car or a plane or something like that. And the correct answer is supposedly a car. Okay. They pointed this out to me in Alaska. They showed me the example question. Well, in Alaska, to talk about cultural differences, when you go to the northern part of Alaska, where they're landlocked and they're weatherlocked, so they don't have cars, they don't have boats, but a lot of people have these private planes. So if they go even a mile away from village to village, you have the natives in Alaska, many that have learned how to fly, and they go there by plane. Well, everyone in that community got that question wrong, because it was culturally biased against them. And there are countless examples where your living environment, if you live in the hood, or the barrio, then a lot of those examples that are put out there on the these standardized tests, they don't connect with you, because that's not your world. Just like in Alaska, they ain't talking about a car in northern Alaska, but they got planes. That's how they get their food in, through planes. So I think that we've so it's in sync with